running a business is a tough and lonely journey. Welcome to the Executives on the Frontlines podcast, where business owners and C-suite executives like you will get real answers to your everyday business problems. I'm your host, Jeff Palacio, and together we will learn from senior leaders who have occupied every top box of a company's org chart for every size organization and who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. Welcome to another episode of the Executives on the Frontlines podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Palacio, and today we're going to talk about if you're a business owner or CEO and you're contemplating outsourcing your manufacturing and or assembly processes to Latin America or Asia. We have an expert guest with us. Welcome, Larry Martinez.
Great. It's great to be here with you.
Larry, I love your expertise on this topic. So, if you're a CEO, chief manufacturing officer, business owner, why would you even look at outsourcing to Asia or Latin America?
For the most part, large company CEOs, small company CEOs take a look at their profitability overall. And for the most part, price pressure from customers are the ones that are driving manufacturers to outsource, whether it be if you're in the US to Mexico or even to Asia, depending on how strong that price pressure is. And year over year price pressure forces you locally to look for different type of components elsewhere so that you can start to actually achieve those price reductions, cost reduction activities. So improving the throughput of your line locally will also help you reduce some costs as well. So price pressure is pretty much the biggest reason that companies are thinking about outsourcing.
Larry, tell us about kind of what are the pillars that you look at or help companies with in terms of when they're considering outsourcing their manufacturing outside the U.S., specifically to Latin America or Asia.
Well, I guess it depends on where you're at in your process or in your journey to get to where you want to be. If you're barely starting to think about outsourcing into Asia or into Latin America, some of the things you may want to consider would be, where are your other components coming from? Are they all in Asia? Are they in Mexico? Or are you buying them locally in the US or Europe? That's where you would tend to have your assembly process so that you can help reduce the supply chain efforts to get the components to your area. After that, you might want to consider uh, what type of partner you have. And at that point, you would consider, how much business are you providing to this subcontractor? Are you 90% of the business, or is your subcontractor well diversified, and they have potentially 20% of your business and 80% of the business with other companies? And if you're in the low end, which is a good place to be, you're 20, 25% of the business, then you need to consider, what other companies are they working for? Are they in the same type of business you are? And if they are, then you need to consider who they are, if they're your competitors, direct competitors, or if they're not. So those are some of the things when you're initially starting to find a subcontractor. And then from there, whether or not all your components are going to be subcontracted. So you may wind up having more than one subcontractor. So it could be an assembly subcontractor. You could have your components, such as a top and a bottom part for a remote control. They may be separate subcontractors. A keypad for a remote control would be another subcontractor. So you could have multiple subcontractors. And keep in mind, with each one of these subcontractors, quality control and your own methodologies need to be in place so that you can confirm that you are indeed getting the product that you're purchasing. And then making sure that the assembler uses those products in the assembly process. If you allow the assembler to purchase the components for you, then the assembler is stepping on the product, and you may be paying more than you need to. So those are some of the basic considerations for selecting a subcontractor: the location, what type of other customers does that subcontractor have, and design for logistics.
So, Larry, the subcontracting process and the material sounds very complex. Do you want to give further detail on kind of other nuances you're going to look at in that area?
Sure. The subcontracting process, material content, and ensuring that the materials that you are intending to put in your product are actually there. So, in short, I learned a long time ago in manufacturing world, in God we trust, and all others we audit. And in this case, we have to make sure that the materials that you are purchasing are actually being used in the product that the end customer is going to be using. So, what type of materials? Are they going to be stainless steel? Are they going to be aluminum? Are they going to be hard plastic? Are they going to be composite materials? And what grade of those materials are they going to have? So all of the testing needs to be done just as if you were purchasing it locally at wherever you're assembling now. So testing, testing, testing. So incoming quality testing to make sure that the product you ordered is correct, and then online testing to make sure that the components are actually working with the rest of the assembled components. Because if you don't have the component A and it doesn't insert into component B properly, you're going to have rework problems. And again, causing additional waste of time, energy, and materials.
And Larry, are there any specific industries that kind of align better to outsource to Asia or Latin America?
Well, small electronics are very good for being outsourced. And I guess the primary consideration is supply chain cost. It costs money to bring things from Asia to the US. So the heavier it is, the more costly it's going to be. The smaller the product is, the more of it you can bring across, usually at a lower cost, depending on what type of product it is. And then again, you have to worry about the duties of those products, wherever you're having them imported into. So making sure that the supply chain, the logistics part of this is all covered, and then the harmonized codes coming into the countries that you're working on, knowing what those are and trying to change and get the proper code so that you're paying the least amount of import duties that you can.
Larry, I am not a manufacturing expert by any stretch, but obviously you are. But it sounds very complicated. You know, subcontractors, subcontractors sounds very expensive. I mean, should a business owner, CEO, chief manufacturing officer even consider outsourcing?
Well, I think that outsourcing can be the correct solution for some companies. But before you take that leap into the subcontractor and then many levels of subcontractors underneath that, you may want to think about investing in a Lean Six Sigma black belt and trying to improve the processes that you have at your own facility. And then from there, determining whether or not that if with those process changes that are going to be proposed to management, if you can handle the price pressure, or is it just going to be delaying the inevitable? So those are some things that companies need to think about. But at the same time, having that professional Lean Six Sigma individual there at the facility can help you prepare for a successful uh, journey into outsourcing, because you need to first have your production lines under control, as lean as they can be, so that when you do transfer the product line elsewhere, that you have the same processes in place. You know where the pain spots are at, and that you're able to handle those and ask or answer any of the questions the subcontractor may have. So first, fix what you have in house. And then second, if the price pressure continues, then consider outsourcing again. Asia, Latin America, depending on where you're at, supply chain and those constraints are going to be key to the successful process.
Larry, you've given some great advice. If you can kind of highlight, the considerations and summarize, when people are looking at outsourcing outside the U.S., what would those points be?
Well, assuming that you really want to do this, finding the location of a subcontractor that you want to use, finding the proper partner subcontractor so that you're not 100% of their business. You want somebody who's going to be there for a while. Second, you want to make arrangements, whether they're locally in country or have one of your own individuals go outside of the country for the quality control to make sure that your processes are being followed, your material requirements are being used. And then finally, taking a look at potential rework. You have costs coming into the country with finished goods, and then the customer rejects it, or the customer has a change order. How do you get it back to China or to Asia or to Mexico or anywhere else in Latin America without killing yourself in rework charges and then the related logistics charges? So again, if you're really wanting to take this journey, it needs to be well thought out. And at the end of the day, realize that the price pressures, they're going to continue, but handling those price pressures with your existing facility, wherever you're at, and then improving as best you can locally. And at that point, consider the next steps, whether it be, say, Mexico or whether it be Asia, and the same subcontracting constraints and points of pressure still remain the same.
Larry, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. We'll have a link to your calendar if people want to learn more about the process and learn about how you add value to companies. But really appreciate you coming on the Executives on the Frontlines podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Executives on the Front Lines. If you are interested in learning more about today's guest, you can schedule a 15-minute call with them by scanning the QR code or using the link in the episode description. Please join me every 2 weeks to learn from another great leader sharing insight that can help you and your business.